push for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to reconsider his leadership continued this week, albeit with less enthusiasm from caucus dissenters. After 24 MPs organized to ask the Prime Minister to think about stepping down for the good of the party, and he said no way, no how, calls for a secret ballot appeared to gain steam earlier in the week, but later fizzle as it became apparent the Prime Minister wouldn't be game for that.
I mean, clearly there is a point where this has to stop, and we're trying to bring that to a head. This just can't be drip, drip, drip for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, meanwhile, said in a radio interview on 580 CFRA this week, quote, the Liberals are morally obligated to keep Justin Trudeau. So why is Trudeau so sure he should stick around, and could he still change his mind? The Scrum is here to answer that. Stephen Maher is the author of The Prince, The Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau. Marika Walsh is a senior political reporter with the Globe and Mail, and Rob Benzie is the Queen's Park bureau chief for the Toronto Star. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Steve, I told you before this that as I was thinking about how to treat this segment, your name came to mind very quickly because of the book, the great book that you wrote, sort of looking inside at the thinking of Trudeau over the years and the people around him. What is, when you think about the question of why Justin Trudeau has decided to stick around and is so sure that he should lead the party into the next election, what is the reason why, in your view?
So I'm going to prevaricate and say there's an uncharitable view and a charitable view. The charitable view would be that he, as he once said, you may recall back when he was a backbencher, feels the country in his bones. He is a fighter. He believes that he has a special role to protect and defend his vision of Canada against this leader who he despises. He believes that he is the only person who can beat him. And he has a long track record of being an underdog who comes from behind and carries the day. The uncharitable view, and I got this from a number of people who work closely with him, is that he has a narcissistic side, and that he is an attention-seeking person who needs to be in the spotlight, that he has an exaggerated sense of himself and links himself with the country in a way that's unhealthy, and he's outstaying his usefulness by staying in this role.
Yeah, those are definitely two, one charitable and one less charitable way of looking at it, Marika. Is your sense, after spending the last week talking to MPs, people who support the Prime Minister and who don't, what is your sense, I should say, of where the pushback on his leadership is right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Steve's actually capturing the spectrum of views. Mm-hmm. And I think adding to that is another charitable view that he believes he is the person, that can hold on to the most seats, that can keep the floor the highest, essentially. I think history shows it's very hard to predict that. Kathleen Wynne and Brian Mulroney made different decisions with similar outcomes. But people on the Hill are concerned that, in part, the fact that he hasn't lost before means he doesn't know what losing looks like. And some of these people have lost before, and they know what it looks like. And they feel like they are heading into a repeat, for example, of the 2018 Kathleen election. They feel that the signposts of things going awry are not being watched because there is that missing sense of understanding that you don't always win. You don't always beat the odds.
That's a really, really good point. And Rob, what is your, I think Marika's point is a very salient one, that, he has this history, and Steve writes about this as well, where in 2019, in 2015 even, in 2021, he did sort of beat the odds, quote unquote, right? He relishes that underdog perspective. I think those MPs who are pushing back at this time feel like this is a lot more than just being the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, there is a whole psychological kind of backdrop to this, Vashi, for sure. And Steve's excellent book, which is $39.99 at Indigo, by the way, The Prince, it delves into the Prime Minister's life story. I mean, remember, Justin Trudeau was famous from the second he was born. His dad was the Prime Minister at the time. He's never really known failure. He's known setbacks like everyone has. And I think that's what is interesting right now. Marika mentioned Kathleen Wynne. There are 6 MPs who were in Kathleen Wynne's caucus in 2018 here at Queen's Park, and 4 of them lost their seats in that election, including 2 of the people who are pushing for the secret ballot, Yvonne Baker from Etobicoke and Helena Jasek from Unionville. So they know what it's like to lose because of an unpopular leader. It's not about the person's competence. Kathleen Wynne, it was and is a capable politician. She had won a majority in 2014, but after 4 years, people wanted to change. The Liberals have been in power here for 15 years. Federally, they've been in power for 9 years. There is a need for change, or there's a hunger for change, certainly. And I think what one thing Trudeau is fortunate, though, he doesn't have any usurper waiting in the wings. It's not like with Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin was waiting in the wings, or with Pierre Trudeau, John Turner was waiting in the wings. There's no one out there seen as the heir apparent. So if you're Mr. Trudeau, you can say, look, I am the only one who can lead us into this next election, because there's no one else, even though the 4 of us may privately think they could do better with someone else. I don't know.
Steve, we had Wayne Long, one of the MPs who at the earliest juncture spoke out against the Prime Minister's leadership on the program last week. And he flagged very early in our interview that it was his sense that the people around the Prime Minister were kind of, insulating him from what Marika talked about, the perspective that they just might lose, or that it is possible that they would lose, that it is not, just fighting any other kind of fight. You spent time with a lot of people who spend time with Justin Trudeau. What do you think about that conclusion?
Well, I think that there is a very small group. It's inevitable over time that the small group around the Prime Minister gets smaller and more insular. And we're pushing the 10-year mark here with this government. So there is a sense of, people I know who are close to those people say, well, they're the only ones now who believe that Trudeau should stay, just like the 3 or 4 people around him. It has a fin de siècle kind of feeling at the moment. And a thing I keep thinking is the next election is going to be, if Justin Trudeau is the candidate, a referendum on whether Justin Trudeau should continue being the Prime Minister. And as somebody who's watched elections for a long time, I keep thinking, is that really what the election should be about? Don't we already know the answer to that question? It seems to me the Canadians are making it pretty clear that they're ready for someone else to take over.
I think, though, that the Prime Minister's office, the people in that office, would hope that the election is about what the Liberals will give and what the Conservatives will take away, in their view.
Yeah, their view is that once the attention of an election captures people's minds and captures more attention than politics is getting right now, where more than half of Canadians don't know that the Hill's not working right now, that will change, that will shift, and that they will give Pierre Poilievre a second look in a negative sense. There is an argument. You've heard people say, for example, Chantal Hébert argues that Brian Mulroney, if he had held on, would have done better than Kim Campbell. So there is this argument of, would somebody do better or not? Hard to do worse, but possible, Steve. And so the people around the Prime Minister say they know the fight they're in. They're not blind to the situation they're in, and they believe they are best placed to seize it. Other Liberals that I talk to are very concerned that they look at the 2019 or 2021 election and see that as an underdog situation, because they say Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole should never have even put you in an underdog place. So the fact that you were even at risk against opponents like that, Pierre Poilievre is that much more effective in his position.
Well, last word to you, Rob, but it isn't Andrew Scheer and it isn't Erin O'Toole.
Yeah. And it also, it's been 9 years. I mean, after this long, ask Stephen Harper. He finally had to go after 9 years. He had won his biggest election in 2011. 4 years later, people were like, time to go, dude. And I think this is the same thing that you're seeing with Mr. Trudeau. And Mr. Trudeau is Mr. Harper thought that it was beneath him that someone like Trudeau could try to defeat him. And I think Mr. Trudeau feels that Mr. Poilievre is beneath him and he just can't abide by him being the next prime minister. It's going to be sobering if indeed he goes into this election as leader, and it looks like he's going to, and he loses. And what if they do have a Kim Campbell result or a Kathleen Wynne result? What will that look like the morning after? What will Mr. Trudeau, when he's staring at the mirror, wonder? Will he think, if only I'd let Melanie Joly or Dominic LeBlanc or Mark Carney take the helm, maybe we would have saved more of the furniture? I don't know.
Well, there's another big election before that one, at least. So we could rest for a while. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the discussion. Steve Marmarika Walsh and Rob Benzie.